I wanted to talk to you because you came into the kitchen tonight and you're like, oh my God, I just had the best therapy session. And I thought, how many 17-year-old guys walk into the kitchen and announce to their family that?
I don't know. I do not know.
Do you care?
No, not really.
Talk to me about therapy. Do you like therapy?
I would like to talk to your audience about therapy.
Okay, do it.
Guys, therapy is like, it's awesome. I love my therapist. I love therapy. When I was younger, I had a horrible experience with therapy. It was with this like old woman who like tried to convince me how to use an elevator because that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid of elevators. She was like, you need to ride the elevator. And I was like, I don't want to. And so I hated therapy. I hated it. And then I got a new therapist last year and it like changed my life.
How?
Because I just love having, it's almost like therapy is almost like having a notebook, but you don't have to write and you actually get an answer back. So you don't have to like take the time and your hand hurts and all that stuff to like write down your thoughts. You just say it and then they say something back to you. And it doesn't have to help, but it's just nice to hear someone say something that isn't part of your friend group or a family member. They're just someone that's there to listen, and maybe that's all they need to do. And I love therapy, and I would fully recommend therapy to anyone because no, it's not like some bad thing. And if you have a therapist, you're super messed up in the head and like everything in your life is going to shit. Like, no, therapy rocks. You can have it when you're perfectly fine and happy. I think everyone should have a therapist because it's just the best.
I agree with you. And the thing that I realize now is had I gone and worked with a therapist, Oak, when things were going okay,
they probably wouldn't have gone back.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Because I hate to burst your bubble, but you are not going to be able to solve all your problems, and your friends with the similar age as you and the similar mindset will not be able to solve the same problems that you have.
Oh my God. Well, I'm so happy and appreciative that you were like, yeah, I'll sit down on the mics with your mom and tell you why this therapy session with Keith was so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Of course.
Why did you want to do it?
Because I felt like I was in a good mood. And I was like, you know what? Like, I haven't done it in a while. Like, might as well just jump in there and be nice.
Why do you think I wanted you to sit down with me and let everybody hear you tell me in real time what you talked to your therapist about tonight?
Because what you would probably say to me if I said no was it would benefit a lot of people, including you.
Yeah, it will. Because I hear every single day from parents around the world about how their kids and their sons in particular don't talk to them. And so it's a real, I think, gift to have you be willing to just sit down and have these conversations, because it gives parents and people with teenagers and college students and young adults in their lives, they actually forward these episodes, Oak, as a way to open up dialogue. And it's working. That's why people are asking so often and so frequently that we have you come back and back and back. So thank you.
Glad I can help.
All right. Well, let's see if this helps or not.
Let's do it.
Okay. You walked downstairs.
That I did.
And we were cooking dinner. And we had your sister on the FaceTime. She was playing a song for us. She just wrote. And you walked into the kitchen.
Yes, I did walk into the kitchen.
And you said,
I love my therapist, Keith.
and it was so funny. You just like strolled around. You're like, I love my therapist, Keith.
Yeah, I do. Shout out to Keith.
What-
Respect.
So what did you talk about in this session?
A lot of things.
Would you be willing to unpack it with me?
Yeah, I mean,
Can you just tell everybody why you wanted to share this? Like what? Because I think it's pretty cool that you're willing to.
do you want the honest answer or do you want the podcast answer?
Either.
The honest answer is that I came downstairs in a good mood and I said, I love Keith. And you said, will you record this with me? And I was in a good enough mood to say sure.
Oh, I like an honest answer. What's the podcast answer?
This is game-changing stuff right here. Life-changing.
Is it?
Depends on how they look at it.
Well, is it for you?
It's a viewpoint that I didn't consider.
About life?
Yeah.
So it was a life-changing therapy session you just had with your therapist, Keith.
Low-key. Yeah. It's like, yeah, little life change right there, a little like tweak in the direction that my life is going in.
Okay. I can't wait to hear it. So why did you start working with Keith in the first place? And then we'll hear about this life-changing session. How long have you been talking to Keith?
Started when? Last year, April? Was it May? It was April.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, April last year. So almost a year, kind of close to a year, a few months away. Sophomore year, and it was weird because freshman year and sophomore year, there was a moment in time in my school life or in my life in the same point in time. It was, I remember the exact time. It was like March. It was like a March time. It was like becoming spring, but still kind of chilly. That's like the memory that I have from these points in time where it wasn't depression. And it wasn't like, I think it was anxiety.
Okay.
It was overwhelming anxiety in my freshman and sophomore year. And it went away. Like freshman year happened in March. It was about 3 weeks gone. Forgot about it.
Hold on a second. I don't remember you having anxiety.
Because I never told you about it.
Why?
Because I didn't want to make it a huge thing. And I didn't want to go to therapy. And I didn't want to like get into that. I didn't want to get into that.
Wait.
I was like, I can do this. I can solve this. I can get over this. Like, we're good. And we were good freshman year.
Wait, hold on a second though. Stop the train.
Stop the phone.
Stop the train. I want to get off.
Don't you dare do that to me.
John Mayer.
We'll include that later.
I had no idea that you were struggling with anxiety for 3 weeks in freshman year of high school. Why did you hide this from me?
I've struggled with anxiety my whole life. The when I talk about that specific time period, it's when my anxiety was at this like weird peak where I just like couldn't really do anything and I was terrified.
Of what?
No idea. Like I couldn't tell you freshman year. And I'll get into what it was later because I know now, but there was, this is probably going to terrify you.
Oh,
I don't know if you've heard this story.
I don't know.
I wrote a memoir about it in sophomore year. So there was this one day in freshman year that I remember. That's like basically the only thing that I remember from when I was anxious like that. And this was actually the first day that I came. I wrote this memoir called The Blue Ceiling because artsy. And like there was this like moment where like later in the day I'll get into it. But anyways, I woke up and it was like one of those March days where it was like there was no snow, but it was like kind of like foggy and misty.
Yeah.
And where we live, like when you look out the windows, like you can't see anything. So it like you feel like you're in like a snow globe. And so I woke up and it was like one of those days where I was in a snow globe and I was like, you know what, like I'm just gonna like stay in bed and watch some TV. Like that sounds nice.
Okay.
And so I was doing that. And all of a sudden, like boom, like semi truck hits me, like I'm lightheaded, I'm confused, I'm like, what's going on? Like nothing feels normal, like I don't feel safe right now, like I'm really scared, I don't know what to do, like I need to get out of my room, like I need to go. And so I like open the door, I go downstairs and I see Dad sitting in front of the fire and he's like, hey dude, what's up? And I was like, I didn't tell him that I was freaking out, but I like looked at him and I was like, I'm okay, like it's whatever. And then I like walked outside. I like looked around, I like took a deep breath. I was like, whatever this is, like you've been anxious before, like you can get over this, like it's fine. Then I go back inside.
Yeah.
I wanted to hug Dad. I wanted to like, I don't know, I wanted to do something. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to get help. I wanted something. And I couldn't do it. Like I just couldn't. I didn't want to.
Why?
Because I didn't want to get into it. I didn't want it to become a process. I didn't want to have to do stuff because I felt like I knew what I was doing. And then what happened is I went back up to my room. I kept watching TV and I remember going back downstairs to find Dad, and he wasn't there. And then I look towards the kitchen, and I like, oh my God, like Rick, like thinking about this moment is so like weird and scary, and like I would never do this ever, and it's super out of character. But I looked in the kitchen, and like you're gonna be very nervous when you hear this. And I looked, also, maybe trigger warning for the viewers. I mean, listeners. Sorry, guys. Maybe trigger warning for the listeners. But I looked at the kitchen, and I looked at like the knife holder.
Uh-huh.
And like I like almost like a movie, like I could fully imagine myself like stabbing myself in the stomach with a knife. And like part of me was like, I should. And I was like, holy fucking shit, like this is not happening right now. Like I am not suicidal. Like I don't want to kill myself. Like I want to live. So like I go back outside. I'm like hyperventilating. I'm like hyperventilating right now. And I like look around. I'm like breathing in and out. I'm like I'm going to be okay. Like it's all okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And like there was this feeling of lightheadedness, and I just couldn't think clearly. And I felt like nothing I would do in that moment would ever matter. And so why do anything? And so that's why I had that thought, is like, I should just like stab myself. Because like if I do something and it doesn't matter, like why do it? Like why do anything? So like why would I keep living my life if nothing I do will ever matter? Like why not just end it now? Then that night, the reason the memoir was called The Blue Ceiling is because later that night I had this like ceiling projector. It was like, it projected like this blue night sky onto my ceiling. It was super cool. Still have it. And I just like remember, this is going to be like such a main character moment, but it was like, and it is, I will fully admit to that. But I reached my hand up, and I like looked at my outline of my hand, and I was just like crying for no reason. In like the darkness of my room, is like my ceiling was blue, and like that was the only light, and I was just like looking at my hand outline and crying and just being terrified. And then it basically just like went away. It was gone. I never thought about it again. Freshman year, like it was gone. Didn't think about it.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
Are you nervous about what I might ask?
No, not really.
Well, first I just want to say thank you for telling me.
I feel like I told you that before, right?
Not that part, no.
I could give you the memoir and you could read it on your own time if you wanted to.
I would love to.
I would be happy to give it to you.
I think it's really odd that you never told me that.
I forgot
because we have
it.
a really good,
oh my God,
open
we have a
relationship.
Great relationship, as stated in the family podcast episode.
Will
which
you
was
stop? Okay,
wonderful. I'm plugging, Mom.
I know. No, but so number one, I'm surprised that you never shared that with me.
I know why I didn't share it with you.
Why?
I didn't share it with you because 2 reasons.
Okay.
The first one was I didn't want to get into it. I didn't want to get a therapist. I didn't want to go on meds. I had horrible experiences with meds and therapists in my past, and I didn't want to go back into it because I was just like, no thanks. And 2 was because since I've had anxiety my whole life. Like I wouldn't say every day, but like every week I've probably had like a small anxious panic, if you will. Like oh my goodness, I'm like anxious right now. Like I'm anxious, I'm nervous, whatever. And like I can handle it. I can do it.
Yep.
And so I felt like I could handle it. And like the reason I didn't tell you is because I was like, I thought I handled it. Like I was like, it's over. Like it didn't come back.
That's interesting.
It did not come back.
Yeah. Okay, I want to say one other thing. I want to address the fact that you may be listening to us talking about a very serious topic, and we're giggling and we're light about it.
People laugh when they're uncomfortable.
Oh,
except
true.
I wouldn't say I'm uncomfortable. I don't know if I'm uncomfortable right now, but I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like this is easier to talk about when I can like throw in a joke.
Got it.
Have some fun.
That makes sense. You know, Oak, I want to specifically address what you said about that thought that you had about the knife, because those kinds of thoughts that are really big, scary, overwhelming thoughts, they can seem uncontrollable because they can come out of nowhere and they can start to get more and more frequent and overwhelming. They are very normal. In fact, according to therapists, almost everyone has experienced a situation like the one you described. But I want to talk further about this topic because it's helpful to talk about it. So hold on to that thought because I know there's more that we're going to talk about, because I got to pause real quick for a word from our sponsors, and we're going to be right back. By the way, you're actually watching an episode of the Mel Robbins podcast, Behind the Scenes.
Yeah.
So make sure you subscribe on YouTube and
Yep.
also follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You want to know why? Because the more this show grows, the more we can continue to bring this to you at zero cost. And that's a really big deal for us. So thank you for supporting us by subscribing to YouTube and by also following the Mel Robbins podcast on a podcast platform.
Yeah.
All right, back to the show.
Cool.
Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and I'm so excited you're here because I'm talking to our 17-year-old son, Oakley, and he's just in real time unpacking a killer therapy session that he had tonight with Keith.
30 minutes ago, I got off the phone. I feel like you're supposed to wait a day, but no, we just jumped right in.
We just jumped right in. We are a deep end kind of family. Let's go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's the other thing I wanted to say. We have 2 years from this, meaning we've had 2 years distance from this topic.
From the freshman topic.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're in a amazing place mentally, spiritually.
Fantastically.
Yeah, and so there is no danger.
No.
And so I'm not triggered by that. And the other thing I wanted to say is, would it surprise you to hear that having thoughts or a fleeting thought about ending your life or dying some death like that is normal?
Yeah. Because I feel like suicidal thoughts I feel like it's been talked about to the point where it's like, you're at the worst of the worst if there's suicidal thoughts. Like, this is where like shit is going down. Like, it's bad. Like, this is bad. Like, this is the worst of the worst. Like, this is horrible. Like,
I get it. Like, you're at the end of the line. When
so,
the
like,
truth is,
so when you hear that somebody has suicide, like when you just said, would you think it's normal that most people do? Like, I'd say no, because it's like,
no, most people do.
I wouldn't expect everybody to be at the worst of the worst, even though.
Oh, I see what you're saying. What you're saying is this. Because this has been talked about so much, particularly to your age group.
Yeah.
It makes you think that when you have a thought like that.
It's more just that, like, I feel like it's talked about where it's like, it's only like the people with the worst condition are going to have that.
Got it.
So it's not, so like when you say like, oh, everybody has it, like, I'm like, really? Like, I feel like it's only the worst of the worst that.
Because of, no, it's normal to have those kinds of thoughts. So I just wanted to address what might sound like a weird tone or an insensitive tone to say, we're 2 years away from it. Oakley's in an insanely amazing place. Oakley is in an incredible place in his life, in his mental health, his spiritual health. He's just happy. And
Period.
It's somewhat normal to have those kind of thoughts. And it's very clear that and one of the things that I think is very important, I've said it over and over and over again, is this. There's a big difference between wanting to end the pain or the anguish that you're feeling right now and actually wanting to end your life. You can figure out how to lessen the pain or the sadness or the weirdness or the anxiety that you're feeling. And you can do that, and you don't have to end your life. In fact, you make your life better by talking about these things that are overwhelming you and asking for help.
Because you can't just keep them inside.
No. Because what happens when you keep them inside?
It's kind of like a Coke can. Like when you shake it up, and then it explodes.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm proud of you for talking about this, Oak. Because it can be torture if you've got that trapped in your own head.
Oh my God, it's horrible.
And I think most people, including the people that we've lost, that we love, to death by suicide, I still would say most people, if somebody had assured them, if I can take away all the pain that you're feeling and you could still have your life, would you want to be here?
Hell yeah.
Right?
Hell yeah.
Exactly. Now, I want to talk to you listening and just check in with you. And what I specifically want to make sure that you hear me say is that it is normal to have these big, scary, and overwhelming thoughts. And when they come out of nowhere or they seem to get louder and louder, it can be terrifying. I know it was terrifying when this all started happening with Oakley. And I'm telling you that this is normal because so many people suffer because they believe that the thoughts will never go away.
That's what I believed. I thought it would never end, and I didn't want to live the rest of my life with those thoughts.
Now, if you knew the thoughts were going to end, would it have made you feel better?
Yeah.
If you knew having those thoughts pop in your mind was perfectly normal, would that make you have felt better in that moment?
Kinda, yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, Oak, because I think so many people, when they start to suffer because of these really scary thoughts, they don't tell anybody.
I didn't want to tell anyone.
I know, and I wish you would have told me. I wish you hadn't suffered alone. I wish you would have told somebody, because the second that you start to talk about it, it immediately relieves you of the burden of carrying this on your own.
Right.
You can figure out how to lessen the pain or the sadness or these awful, like, kind of thoughts that keep popping into your head. You can do that. And you can do that, and you don't have to end your life. In fact, when you do that, you make your life better.
Mm-hmm. How?
And that's why I'm saying this to you as you're listening to me in Oakley. Tell someone if you're having big and scary and overwhelming thoughts.
Tell anyone. Just tell anyone.
I also want to tell you, if you're having big and scary and overwhelming thoughts, you're not fucked up.
No.
Those thoughts are temporary. They will pass. And they're going to pass so much quicker when you get them out of your head and you tell someone. You know, my friend Amy, who you know, Oak, she said when you have big, scary thoughts like that, she heard a therapist say it's like being trapped in a paper bag. You can't see anything. You can't think of anything else to do. It sort of clouds your mind. But the second you find the courage to say it out loud to somebody, it's like that paper bag. It just shreds. And you'll realize and you'll see that you're not alone anymore. There are people there that can help you and will help you. And what you're experiencing is normal. And you can get through this. And so I had a question because, you know, you just said to everybody, Oak, that you didn't tell me about what was happening freshman year.
No.
And what would you advise somebody who is listening to this right now, who relates to what you're talking about, and maybe they haven't told anyone? The reason why I'm asking this is I know so many parents and aunts and uncles and teachers and therapists are going to forward this episode to young adults and college students in their life, and just people they're worried about. So knowing that you just explained that you were worried I would make something of it, you didn't want to get into it, you thought you could handle it, knowing what you know now, what would you say to that person who hasn't told somebody?
Well, if you are close in age to me, I don't know, teenager, mid-20s, I don't know, college, high school, middle school, whatever, it does not matter what is going on in your head. If it is overwhelming, if it is scary, if it is stopping you from doing things that you can normally do, you should always, 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 always tell someone. And you may be worried that it'll make things weird or it'll change things in your life. And it most likely will, but it is going to change your life for the better. In the beginning, for me at least, I thought to myself that, hey, I can keep this in. Like, I've done it before. I've done it 10,000 times before. Like, I can do it again. And yeah, you can do it in the beginning. But instead of waiting till you collapse, just get it over with right in the beginning and tell someone. That's all you have to do.
It'll make it better.
It will make it better.
Do you wish you had told me earlier when it was happening in 9th grade?
Yeah.
I do too.
Because I doubt it would have come back in sophomore year.
Ooh, good point. Speaking of sophomore year, let's go there.
Let's do it.
So what happened sophomore year? because you said, this anxiety hit you for a week period in March freshman year.
Gone, forgotten about.
But the shit hit the fan
Oh
sophomore
my
year.
God.
Oh,
So,
it's terrifying.
flashback. Beginning of sophomore year. Sophomore year is awesome. I loved my sophomore year. Great friends, great experiences, great classes, super fun. It was great. It was same time, March, or was it April? Might have been April. I think
We're
it was.
going to have to track this year.
We will have to try this. Hey, it's coming to that time. Let's.
It is.
Not yet. Anyways, April comes around, and everything's good. Everything's good. And then in my English class, like I just talked about, my teacher had us write a memoir about anything we wanted. And so in sophomore year, I wrote about my experience that I had freshman year.
Okay.
Around the same time. And so by writing that, I basically like mentally dove back into that mindset, not mindset, but like into that time. And I remembered how I felt, and I remembered what it was like. And I remember the hopelessness and the anxiety. Anyways, so I had brought myself back to those emotions. I remembered them. I kind of brought myself back to a time where I was super vulnerable, and I had to go back and be vulnerable in that moment. And then
I can see your eyes tearing up just thinking about it.
not really, not in this moment.
A little bit.
Okay.
Not gonna lie, a little
And
bit.
so those thoughts are fresh in my mind. And since I was a sophomore and it was a year later, I wanted to try and like unpack it and think about what it actually meant, why I felt that way. And while I was doing that, like a week rolled around, and the next week in that class, my English teacher, again, showed us a movie. And this movie was about climate change. And it was about how in like 5 years, it's irreversible and we're fucked. And it was like possible solutions and all this stuff. And then it told us what would happen if these solutions didn't happen. And so I come out of the movie and I'm like, what could we do? Like realistically, like as a world, like what can we do?
Okay.
So I started thinking about my town, and then my state, and then my country, and then the world. And then I was like, what if we can't do anything? What, like, can somebody else help us? And then I was like, is there somebody else? And I was thinking about the universe. And then I was thinking about expanding. We become a pebble. We become a grain of sand. We become literally like nothing. Like we become nothing in my mind. And all of a sudden it's like a light switch in my mind where I'm like, holy shit, like nothing matters. Absolutely nothing matters to me. Nothing I do.
Do not get yourself back in that state. Okay.
I'm
I was just like I don't.
No. So nothing matters. Nothing I do will have an effect. Nothing anybody does will change anything. So why do anything? Why? And so I thought about that, and I kept thinking about that, being like, there has to be an answer. There has to be an answer. Like a week passes and there's no answer. And then all of a sudden, I start to get these nervous anxiety attacks where I'm lightheaded and I can't think, and everything is rushing out of my head, and I'm scared and I'm confused. And it's all because in those moments, I keep telling myself that nothing I do is going to matter. No one I talk to, nothing I do, nothing will ever change anything. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what anybody does.
The world's going to end.
Because the world, not the world's going to end, but just like in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. We do not matter.
Got
That's
it. Climate
the thought process I
change
had.
and the inability.
No, climate change wasn't my thought.
Okay.
It wasn't about the world ending. The movie about climate change sparked like a thing about like me thinking about
Do I even matter?
the bigger picture.
Got
And then I realized that I was like, I don't matter. Nobody matters. The world doesn't matter.
Well, let me pick up the story now.
Well, it's not done yet.
Well, because in this instance, you let us know what was going on.
That is what was going on. And it was there was one moment we were eating dinner together.
Yeah.
And I just had to like get up and go to the bathroom. and like look in the mirror and be like, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, you'll get through this. And I was like, I was like, I can't get through this. Like, I can't do this. And in that bathroom, I was like, if this keeps up, like, I am going to kill myself. Like, I will. Cause like, that's how scared I was. Like, I couldn't live with this fact, and I couldn't accept the fact that I felt like nothing mattered.
Yeah. It was a terrifying thing to go through with you.
It was so...
Because you had a complete breakdown, and you started explaining that these thoughts had been cascading, and you didn't want to think this, but you didn't know how to stop it. And I'll never forget that, because I was holding you, and you were crying, and you were scared, and I was crying and scared, and it had just come out of nowhere that you had gone from just thinking and thinking and thinking and not telling us to a complete breakdown.
Yeah.
And I asked you, I was like, are you in danger right now? Are you going to hurt yourself? And do you remember what you said?
I said no. I
You
was
said
like,
no.
I'm too scared to do that. Like,
And
I don't want to.
Yeah, and you also said no, but I can't live like this, Mom. I can't keep thinking these
Right.
thoughts. And I kept going, what thoughts? And you kept saying, I don't matter. Nothing matters.
I feel like even to this day, like, I still can't truly explain the thoughts that I was having, because it was just like, I can't like wrap my head around them. And so like, I was like dying to like explain it to you. And every time I like told you something, you'd be like, oh, so is it this? And I was like, that's not it. Like, that's not it. And like, I just like couldn't figure out what to say.
You did a really good job of explaining it. You know, when I would have very acute moments of anxiety when I was younger, I would have this thing happen that was equally scary, Oak, where I didn't have the thoughts go first. Nothing matters, nothing matters. I would all of a sudden feel this weird thing happen in my body. Like you called it like a switch that flipped. And all of a sudden, I would have this experience where everything felt fake. Almost like the Truman Show.
Right.
Or that your whole life is a set that's fake. Right. And I would repeatedly have this feeling that if the wind blew, all of these walls in this room would just flop down.
Like a TV set.
Like a TV set. And I would find myself in the middle of the desert with no one in sight. And the only person, and is Earth even real? And is this room even real? Like, that's how it was. Terrifying. Yeah. Absolutely terrifying. Yeah. So I understand what that's like. And for those of you wondering what we did, I went into first responder mode. Do you remember?
You wouldn't let me sleep alone.
I know. I slept
you wouldn't
in your bed.
You wouldn't let me
with
be
you.
alone. Oh my God. You took me out of school.
Yep.
For a week.
For a mental health.
We went back to Massachusetts.
Yep. To see doctors.
I'm trying to think about what else you did.
I wouldn't let you be alone. I wouldn't let you sleep alone. I made you eat. Dad meditated with you.
Yeah.
We got you into therapy as fast as possible.
Yeah.
You
got on medication.
Tried some medication that really
Still
helped.
On it. It's the best.
Help you climb out of that hole, man. Like, sometimes you need a ladder.
Yeah, you do.
Sometimes you also need a surfboard. And so they can work both ways, and they work.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what led you
to therapy.
What
a segue. This is like, oh wait, also I feel
it's a 25-minute segue.
I want to say another thing. Can I talk about the John Mayer song?
Sure.
In terms of it? Okay, like jumping back before we go to therapy. At the time, there was this song that I still love today, but I think it also contributed to my anxiety. It's there's this like underground artist. His name's John Mayer. I don't know if any of you know who he is, but I think he's a pretty good artist. And there's one of his songs. It's called "Stop This Train." And basically, like, train symbolizes time and how like time keeps moving. And like John, I don't know if I should call him John. We're not friends, but like John Mayer wants the train or time to stop. And it's just like him being like, stop time. Like, let me stay where I am. Like, I want to get off. Like, I just want to be with what I am right now. And then it ends with him like talking to his dad, and his dad's like, don't stop, like time, like just like you just want to hold on and just like keep going for as long as you can and just like appreciate it and be in it. And like I think, oh my goodness,
it's making you emotional.
Oh my God, it always does. And
why does that make you emotional?
Because like time is just like, oh my God, that's too much. Like that's too scary. Not scary, but like that's just so much to think about. Like how like time is just gonna keep going.
Yeah. You know, I always have that feeling when I'm in a museum. And, you know, I'll be looking at a painting and I lean forward and it's like something has been painted in the 1800s.
Jeez.
Have you had that experience?
I'm way too bored in a museum to ever pay attention to dates.
Well,
I would love to be like a museum guy, but I can't. Because it's just like fun and like mysterious and it makes you like more interesting. I've actually gotten into museums more than I used to be, but I don't know. My memories of museums were always just like, this is the most boring thing ever, like staring at a wall for 15 minutes.
Meanwhile, your mother is having a small existential crisis as she's looking at paintings. Because as I lean forward, I'm like, this was painted in the 1800s? That means there is a person standing in front of this canvas 200 and whatever years ago. I can't even do the math on this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel so small in the timeline of humanity. And it's the same kind of thing that you're talking about.
Yeah. And so like that song just sparked something in me where I was like, time is going to keep going and like it won't like
slow down.
It won't slow down. And like that's scary. And like that added to everything. And
yeah.
That's the whole John Mayer story. Anyways, John Mayer, if you're listening, please contact me immediately because I love you.
I remember that day. Because you texted
did I like call
me.
You
you
and
called
I was like,
me
yeah.
sobbing again. You love to cry. You're a good crier. Because you were so grateful for your life and you were grateful to be up here in Southern Vermont and for our family, and that song played and you were calling me from the high school parking lot crying about how much you love your life. And who knew that just 3 weeks later
it would like boom,
it would completely collapse and you would be in probably the worst mental breakdown I've ever seen you.
Yeah.
Really scary as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm proud of you, though. I'm proud of you for asking for help, for telling us the truth, for seeing a therapist, for taking medication, for turning toward it to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
Before you label yourself as someone who has social anxiety, have you ever considered maybe you're just bad at small talk and you hate being fake at big gatherings? Is it possible? I mean, it does make you stop and wonder. We've all had that feeling on a Friday night or late on a Saturday where you've made plans and then all of a sudden, as it gets closer and closer to you needing to get off the couch or to head home from whatever it was that you were doing and get dressed and get ready to go out again, you start to feel this heaviness and this dread in your body, right? You've had that feeling before. You're like, ugh, do I have to go to that birthday party? Ugh. Do I really want to go to that fundraiser or out to the bar tonight? Oh, why did I say yes to this? Well, before you start to label yourself as somebody who has anxiety, social anxiety, right? I want you to stop and consider the difference between social anxiety and just actually not liking big parties. Seriously. I'm going to teach you the difference in this video. So if you're struggling with a form of social anxiety, all of that behavior that you feel, that dread that you feel, right? That heaviness that hits you right before you're about to go out. If it's social anxiety, all of that heaviness and that dread, it is literally triggered by the fear of doing it. You start to think about what's going to go wrong. You're scared that something is going to go wrong. You start to get nervous about what's going to happen, right? It's this feeling of intense dread. That's kind of the feeling of what it's like to have anxiety about social situations. And here's the irony of the thing. You may actually want to go to that birthday party. You may actually want to go to the concert. You may want to go out to the bar tonight to your friends, but you feel this dread kick in as you think about doing it, okay? That's anxiety caused by social situations. The other thing that I mentioned is maybe you just hate small talk, right? Maybe you hate being fake. That's me. And that's not a feeling of dread. The avoidance that you're feeling, this resistance to going, is due to dislike, not dread, dislike. Big difference between anxiety caused by social settings and simply being somebody like me. I hate small talk. I hate pretending that I'm interested when I'm not that interested. I hate big group settings. I'm really more of the kind of one-on-one, small group, deeper, more intimate conversations kind of gal. And so before big parties, I just kind of get this like, ugh, do I really want to do this? Because I'm not the kind of person that likes what's required to go to a big networking event. So here's a surprising fact. You may feel the dread, the fear, the kind of anxious feelings that come with a big social situation, but you may still want to go. And that's how you also know that this is probably more in the lane of fear and dread and anxiety than it is just disliking small talk. You know, if you're thinking about like, I'm going to embarrass myself, or what if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if I have to go to the bathroom, or what if my face turns red, or what if this, or what if that, or what if I see that person, that's more dread. That's more fear, and that's more in the lane of anxiety. So the next time you're in a situation, I'm going to give you some questions in order for you to help yourself flush this out a little bit more, okay? Before you're like, oh, for sure, Mel Robbins, it's fear, it's dread, it's definitely a form of some sort of anxiety that I'm feeling. Just take a minute for a second and ask yourself this. Is the reluctance and the resistance that you feel, is it just a sign that you prefer to be home? Not because home feels safe, but because you just like being home by yourself better. That's number one. The next thing that you should ask yourself is, does the nervousness or the dread or the resistance that you feel just mean that you're the kind of person that likes deeper conversations? You prefer to be around 2 or 3 people. You're not the kind of person that loved being at fraternity parties when you were younger, or loved the big social scene, that it just is sort of like, ugh, I could do without that. Like, I'm going to be happier if I never do one of those things again. Or is the nervousness and resistance more because you're afraid something bad's going to happen? See, if it's something bad's going to happen, that's more in the lane of dread, right? If it's more in just like, I just kind of have a preference here. It's not that I think something bad's going to happen. I just prefer something else, which is where the resistance comes from. Here's another question that you can ask yourself. Are you nervous because you're going to see people from your past, or see people that you think judge you, or because you're going to be put in a situation where you feel like you're going to have to explain yourself? Now, it may surprise you to know that I'm somebody who feels all of these things. I just prefer to stay home. You know, I bitch all the time that I don't have a great social life, but the truth is I kind of prefer to stay home. I feel like I'm missing out when I see everybody at these big parties, but then I think, well, actually, I don't really have fun at those things. You know, I was just with my best friend from childhood this weekend on a business trip. We often meet up and see one another while we're on the road working. And she said to me, she said, you know, Mel, a lot of people don't know this about you, but you're actually kind of a shy person. You know, I know that you have this big persona and you can get on a stage and you seem to be very outgoing and energized by talking to people. But the truth is, the Mel Robbins that most people don't know, you're like a shy person. You kind of stick to yourself. You've had the same friends for a very long time. You're not somebody that's ever out and about and at lots of different parties. You kind of keep your circle tight. And so I'm telling you this because I think that oftentimes if you're extroverted in your work or extroverted in some aspects of your life, you put pressure on yourself to be extroverted everywhere. The truth is, even though I'm very extroverted in my work, I'm a homebody at heart. And, you know, my husband is very introverted. And that just means, by the way, if you're introverted, that you get your energy drained when you're around people. I tend to have my energy amplified when I'm working and I'm around people. But the second I'm done working, I just want to go home and sit on the couch, if you know what I mean. And so whenever Chris and I, Chris being the introvert, me being sort of extroverted, but I really, you know, kind of prefer small gatherings. Whenever we get invited anywhere, we're both so excited to see people that we like. But if it's a party that's bigger than like 3 or 4 couples, I always feel this resistance to going. And it's not because I'm nervous, and it's not because I think something's going to go wrong, and it's not because I'm running through scenarios in my head. That would be an indication of some anxious feeling about social gatherings. I just have this kind of weird resistance because I know I would prefer to be at a smaller gathering. That's it. It's a preference because I can't stand small talk. And I can't stand pretending to be interested when I'm really not that interested. And so I prefer deep conversations with just a handful of people. And don't get me wrong, I mean, every once in a while, every one of us needs a massive blowout with a DJ and a dance party and an all-out, just amazing time with a big group of people. But just the small talk thing, not my thing. So if you're sitting there going, you know, Mel, as you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about what I feel as I'm pulling up to a big party, it's not a preference. It's really about dread. It's not that I favor smaller group, it's that I'm actually afraid of larger social situations. And typically what happens when you're dealing with anxiety that stems from a fear of social situations is the fear is triggered by this opinion that something bad's going to happen, that you're going to face some sort of rejection, that people are going to judge you. And if this is the case, you are dealing with something that you really should get some help with, because you may actually want to join the crowd, but it's your nerves and it's your fear of rejection and judgment that keeps you from doing it. And so here are some like quick signs that this is you. Number one, you feel anxious because you think something embarrassing is going to happen. Or maybe in the past, you had something embarrassing happen. And so it's sort of you relive it over and over and over again in your mind as you're about to step into another situation that's similar. When you are at a party, you avoid talking to people that you don't know or have never met or don't know well. Another thing that you might find is that you start to fixate and worry about things that we all do, like forgetting somebody's name or sneezing in the middle of a class or everybody suddenly turning and looking at you and you forgetting what you were going to say and then your face turning bright red. You know, maybe you are worried because you're worried about going to the bathroom while you're at this big party, because you have nerves about having to go to the bathroom in public. That's actually pretty common. Maybe you find that you're at these parties, but you're fidgeting and your leg is shaking, or that you're constantly looking at your phone. You're constantly gripping your phone. Instead of being at the party, you are managing your fear about what's going to happen or something bad happening by burying yourself in your phone and texting people who aren't there. Or finally, you are fixated on the idea that everybody is thinking about you and that you assume that people don't like you. If these are starting to be like, God, that's me. Every time I do go to the bar, I'm assuming people are judging me. Wow, when I get invited to a birthday party, I have this weird feeling that they actually didn't want me there. This isn't you disliking something. This is dread and fear that falls into the zone of anxiety around social settings. So, what do you do? Rule number one, understanding it is super important. So rule number one is you just gotta name it. And I don't want you to say, I'm anxious, I have social anxiety. I want you to say, I'm feeling anxious whenever I'm in a social setting. Because you are not your thoughts and feelings. And when you name what you're feeling, and you say, I'm feeling anxious whenever I step into a social setting, something really cool happens. And this is a study that was in the upward spiral. And what they found is that when you put your feelings into words, namely you start saying, I feel this nerves and this fear and this anxiousness in a social setting, rather than going, I'm anxious, and labeling yourself. When you put your feelings into words, something really interesting happened. So they did this study where they had people take a look at photographs of folks that were having really emotional facial expressions. And what happens is if you look at a photograph of somebody who's like, Well, your amygdala in your brain immediately activated and read the emotions in the picture. But as soon as you're asked to name the emotion you're seeing, oh, I see anger, the ventral lateral prefrontal cortex turns on and it reduces the emotional amygdala reactivity. In other words, by consciously recognizing and naming the emotions, this is so cool. When you name the emotion, I'm feeling afraid, nervous, or anxious about this thing. Naming it reduces the impact internally that you feel from that emotion. Pretty cool, huh? So number one, you are going to name what you're feeling instead of labeling yourself with it. The second thing that you can do is you can tap into cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, and that just involves making changes to the way that you think and feel about a situation. So what you're going to do is you're going to identify patterns of thinking that cause you to want to avoid social interaction. So for example, if you tell yourself nobody wanted me here anyway, and then you fixate on it, or another example might be that the last time you went to a party, your dress ripped and it was really embarrassing. And now you think about it every time you go to a party. When you identify the pattern of thinking that makes you then feel bad, what you can do is you can then adopt more positive self-talk to encourage and coach yourself through that fear. The third thing that you can do, you're going to hate this, but it's called situational exposure. Just gradually reintroduce yourself to those situations that make you feel nervous, afraid, or anxious. And, if you fear large groups, for example, just start by going out with a friend one-on-one, and then work your way up again to a smaller group of friends, and so on. And by the way, therapists are super awesome in terms of helping you with situational exposure experiments and methods. Another thing that you can do is you can ask people for help. Just tell people what you're dealing with and ask somebody to give you some extra support. Key to the support in helping an anxious person become more independent over time is you not relying on them all the time. So for example, invite your friends to go with you to things. But you've also got to realize that you are going to need to start to come out of your shell. So for example, if you want to help a friend that is really anxious, invite them to do things. And when you're out at the bar, or you are out at a networking event, or you are out doing something fun, bring them into the conversation, ask them questions to help them come out of their shell. Another thing that you can do if you're socially, you get nervous in those kind of situations, is as you feel yourself getting nervous, just do the 5 senses technique, where you feel the nerves or the fear or the anxiousness rising up. Take a deep breath and then ground yourself in the present moment. What do you see? Look around. I see the camera on this desktop computer. What do you smell? I can almost smell that it's cool right now. What do you hear? I hear kind of the buzzing of the light bulbs in this room that I'm shooting in. What do you feel? Oh, I feel my cat, Mr. Noodle, and his awesome fur. What do you taste? My mouth is kind of dry right now. I literally just brought myself into the present moment with you. And you do it by taking a deep breath and then noticing what all 5 senses are feeling. And finally, you got to be kind to yourself as you're doing this. If you're trying to lower the nerves and the fear and the dread that comes with social settings, it's not going to go away overnight. It is going to take consistent effort on your part, because the truth is, at this moment in your life, for whatever reason, any big social situation makes you feel a little nervous. That's okay. Happens to a lot of people, but you do want to attack this head on, because the more you isolate and the more you avoid the things that you're afraid, the bigger the fear is going to get. And so, number 1, analyze what situations trigger this. Number 2, break it down. How can you think about it differently? How can you change the situation next time? Ask for a friend to support you. And remember that generally, people are way more focused on themselves than they are focused on you. And they're not scrutinizing your behavior half as much as you think they are. In fact, they're probably not scrutinizing it at all. You're so busy in your head scrutinizing yourself. Everybody else is basically doing the same thing with themselves. And so I want you to understand that with consistent effort, with a little bit of a commitment from you, with some help from some friends and perhaps even a therapist, step by step, you can name this fear, you can face this fear, and through the actions that you're taking, this dread will start to disappear, and you may just start to love those big social things that you've been avoiding. I love also that homecoming is not only therapy, that there is a deeply spiritual aspect to this.
Yes.
So what is sort of how would you describe the difference between therapy and spirituality and the work that you need to do in both areas?
That's right. So unfortunately, many people who are in the mental health field did not get trained to incorporate spirituality. And so there's research that shows on average, mental health professionals endorse a lower level of spirituality or religiosity than the general public.
Really?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think a part of that can go with higher levels of education, that a lot of times people can disconnect as with education can feel like they need to prove everything. And spirituality is beyond our proving or our being able to manipulate it, right? So it's like it's not concrete, right? And so that's in the field of psychology, the actual, the founders in the field were often people of faith. But then there was this move in the field where we wanted to prove we're a science. So if we want to prove that we're a science, then we can't talk about anything people find spooky or soft or, in some other realm. And so then there has been a neglect from that area. And then I think the other part of it has been the recognition that some people have been harmed in spiritual spaces. So then some therapists will overgeneralize and think that it is all harmful, as opposed to whenever you get people together, you're going to have some good and some bad, some things that are healthy or unhealthy.
What is your definition of spirituality?
It is an awareness of the sacred beyond what we can see.
Oh, I love that definition. And now that we're on this topic, it occurs to me, how could you possibly heal without pulling faith?
Yes.
And a belief that something that you have not experienced is possible.
That's it. 100%. Because I even say to be a therapist, social worker, life coach, any of these things, you have to have faith. And for people to show up, there has to be a faith that there can be more than what I have seen and what I have experienced. It's like when I'm counseling people who have only had unhealthy relationships, and I have to say, just because this one is better doesn't mean it's good, right? If you're just used to bad treatment, if people call you back, you're like, right? They called me back. And it's like, that was nice, but there's more, right?
Yes.
There's more.
Yes. So we've kind of started stepping toward this awareness. How do you combine the spiritual practice and the belief in something that you may have never experienced or seen?
Right.
With the work to start to heal, or as you say, reparent yourself in the physical space.
That's right. So a part of it is what gives us the motivation to do the work, because a lot of times we're operating based on evidence, which is what we've seen. So if I've only had bad experiences, my parents abandoned me, this person left me, this person mistreated me, if I believe that is all that exists, then the conclusion would be, I am unworthy. Right? That's the only possible conclusion, because, this idea, this, victim blaming, self-blaming of if I deserved better, I would have received better. and you will hear people blaming other people for being mistreated. You know, they'll say, oh, well, you must have allowed it. And so in order for me to come to a different conclusion, that I am worthy of what I have not yet experienced, I have to have the belief of the more.
How the heck do you do that? When
Yes.
your whole life
Yeah.
you have experienced either abuse or mistreatment or discrimination
Yes.
or violence. How do you, when you have evidence that does make you feel unworthy? Because I'm sure you get these DMs and these emails all day long, so do we,
Yeah.
of people who so want to believe that they are worthy, that something is better, that they can change their life for the better. And you and I can sit where we are and go, of course you can. I have just I have so much evidence that it's possible. It's both spiritual and I could argue the case.
Yes. Yes.
But for somebody who is sitting in the disbelief,
Yeah.
how do you cross over
Right.
to believe?
Yeah. So it's a couple of levels. One of them is to get people to reflect on what do they believe all human beings deserve.
Well, I believe I'm a chicken.
Right.
And all I see are chickens.
Well,
and I believe I'm on the ground. You know what I'm
yes,
saying? Like we
yes,
go back to
yes,
this. How do
yes.
you possibly convince yourself that you
Right.
could be an eagle if you've never seen one?
Yes, yes. So what we connect with is disrupting what we call the cognitive distortions. So it's not
That's
just...
a big word.
Yes,
What is
I'm
cognitive
gonna-
distortion?
So your false thoughts, the lies.
Okay.
The lies you told yourself and the lies other people told you.
What if...
But let me give you an example
Okay,
of the
please.
lies. So for people who were molested,
Yes.
they either were told directly or indirectly that that is their fault, right? That it's because they developed early, or it's because they shouldn't have been over there, or whatever it is, that somehow that's on you. And so we have to demonstrate that that is a lie. So how do I demonstrate that that is a lie? Does every girl who develops breast early deserve to be molested?
Of course not.
So you are not an exception to that rule.
Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
I can see another lie because I'm a survivor of that kind of abuse.
Yeah.
It's the shh. Don't tell anyone or you'll get in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. And what I learned about that, I say from my own journey, is I was taught that keeping quiet kept the peace until I realized whose peace is it keeping.
Oh.
Right? The offender's at peace. The people who don't want to deal with it at peace. And I, in this little body, am holding all of the war. So I don't want to hold it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, this is what we're taught. You're going to upset things. You're going to upset people. Nobody wants to hear that. And yeah, there's no peace.
Whose peace are you keeping?
Yeah.
You're making it easy for everybody else as it's slowly
Right.
destroying you.
Absolutely. And often then they're doing it to multiple people over the course of years. The silence gives freedom for it to continue.
How do you counsel people who, in the process of starting to come back home to themselves, to learn to fly, to stop holding the peace for other people around you? How do you counsel people to then go back into their life? Like let's just say it's a relationship.
Yeah.
Where you have somebody that you're dating or in relationship with,
Yep.
and there's alcohol or drugs. You've had the conversation. You've gone around and around and around.
Yeah.
And you're the one that's not saying anything. So you're keeping the peace for them.
Right.
How do you handle like that sort of disruption in your life now that you're starting to, because it's scary.
Yes.
The
it is.
homecoming process can also be scary because you're
Yes.
going to have to confront things.
And it's going to require some losses. And some people are not going to be happy with the new you. People like the silent you. They like the compliant you. They like the doormat you. Who wouldn't like that? Right? So when you start getting some opinions and start getting your voice and not wanting to do some of the unhealthy things you've been doing, not everyone is going to celebrate. And that will be important for you to see. Who wants me whole and who prefers me broken? And then I will have to start making some adjustments. And there are a range of ways we can do it. So like in the work chapter, we say there's one path for if I want to stay on this job and how do I restore myself? And there's another path where I need to leave this job. And in relationship with people, whether romantic or otherwise, some I will have to end and some it will have to be different because I'm different. And there can be a grieving there.
Wow. You know, in your new role, you are really wanting to bring access to therapy, to mental health support, to the process of a homecoming for people, to as many people as possible. So why is therapy? What is therapy and why is it important?
Yeah. So therapy is when you have a trained, licensed facilitator who understands how to journey with you from where you are back home to yourself without judgment and with compassion and without needing you to take care of them.
Oh, that last part was the big one.
That's the big one. That's why your friend is not the same thing. Your family member is not the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had always said objective and licensed, but the fact that you just said you don't have to take care of them.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the huge part, especially for those of us who have tendencies toward taking care of people. Right?
Yeah.
So then in your other relationships, you'll say, I don't want to burden people, or I know they have a lot going on, so let me just pour into them. Well, this is the space where you don't have to give. You don't have to be on. You don't have to do that. You know, I tell my clients, I'm good. Right? I have spaces outside of here that are for me. So you don't have to worry. I have the capacity to hold it. And that's what we need.
And you also have the tools.
Yes.
To help us recognize and call ourselves out where we're being a chicken.
Right.
Where we could be an eagle.
Yeah.
And how to take flight.
And I will say it is so important to have the tools and the understanding, because people who don't will often blame. Let's say if you have a child who's depressed and their parents just call them lazy.
Yes.
Right? They don't understand what they're looking at. And so that's a part of what's important as well, is perspective and insight into what I'm seeing.
If somebody in your life is struggling, I'm just going to send my husband to therapy. Just going to send my kid to therapy.
Yeah.
Does that work?
So there is a benefit of individual and family.
Okay.
Right? Because I'll say, especially with children, what I saw when I first started was people would drop off their child and I would spend like an hour building this kid up. And then they pick them up and in the parking lot, they're cussing the kid out.
Oh,
it's like this, like they didn't even make it home. So like it's, what are we just going to do this every week? And so now I'm seeing like what the real dynamic is. So, you know, with couples, I will say there is a part of our work that is individual. Let's say if I'm working with a sexual trauma survivor. So there's a part that is that person's journey, but then there's a part for the couple to say, like, what will the intimacy be like for us given the history, and how do we support each other and have patience with each other? And I want to name, as we're talking about people, is not only self-care, but community care.
Let's talk about that. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So we heal in relationship to other people. There is something very liberating and healing in being known, like you reveal yourself and people still love you, right? That people still choose you, that people, that you feel seen and heard and supported. There's emotional social support, which is like someone I can cry with,
Yep.
someone I can share my good news with, someone who I can vent to. But then there's also instrumental social support. Are there people who can help me in concrete, practical ways? And it's important that we know which friend or family member is good at what, right? You may have a relative who's not touchy-feely, right? They're not good with the tears, but they can help you find a job, right? So that's another type of support.
Yeah. I'm surprised and saddened by the number of people that will reach out when they hear you say that and say, I have no one. When you have somebody that you are working with who is telling themselves the story that I have no one, what are the rituals or the tools or the tactics? Because you give homework in this book. Every chapter has homework.
That's right.
I would imagine every counseling session that you do as a therapist has homework. So what would the homework be if you're somebody who says, I have no one?
Then one of our goals will be to make friends. And first get their buy-in. Can we say that that's a goal for you, is to make friends? And so then we have to think about where are we going to get these friends? Sometimes it's brand new people. So it may be you sign up for a cooking class, or you join a book club, or you join a political organization, or your yoga group. And then sometimes you have people, but you have kept it very surface. So then I want to deepen my relationships. And the Surgeon General has been talking recently and issued the advisory about loneliness. And what I like to tell people is loneliness is nothing to be ashamed of. Some people, when they hear you say you're lonely, they just say you need to love yourself. And I like to say that's not the same thing. You can love yourself and still desire a connection to other people. So that is not an automatic absence of self-love. And so then if I have acquaintances that are all very surface, then to deepen it, am I willing to go deeper? Because again, I can start to shift the tide when I talk about deeper things, then other people will often meet me there.
Wow.
Next question. How do you get people to go to therapy but refuse to say that they need it? So how do you get people to go to therapy when you know they need it and they refuse?
Well, you can't make anybody do anything, but you can make it clear what your boundaries are. If somebody doesn't think they, quote, need therapy, then the first issue is that they don't understand what therapy's for, because everybody needs therapy in their life. Now, let me unpack that sentence. You don't need therapy. You need therapy in your life. What does that mean? Therapy is when you are engaged in a conversation about your life, about your thoughts, about your habits, about your hopes and dreams and your relationships and the obstacles and challenges that you're facing, that you're in a conversation about those things intentionally, and you're doing it ideally with a person that is objective, meaning they're not a friend and they're not a family member. And the most powerful thing about the relationship is that because they're objective and because they have some level of training, you're not responsible for their feelings. So this is the one person in your life. You don't have to worry about what they think or about what their feelings are, about what you're discussing. You have another human being that is trained to listen to you and help you untangle the thoughts and the behaviors and the patterns and the things in your life that you want less of or that are making you unhappy, and to amplify the things that are going well. And so I look at therapy as a luxury. I think it's a privilege. And I believe it is something that every human being on the planet deserves. Just like when you go to an elementary school or middle school or high school and there's a school counselor. That is a resource that is there in order to help you be successful. And that's what I see about therapy. And so I would start to talk about therapy very differently, because when you tell somebody they need to go to therapy, you're basically saying you're fucked up and you need to do something about it. And so that's confronting. No wonder who wants to go to therapy when you feel like it must mean something's wrong with you. So to me, therapy is an incredible gift you give to yourself if you can afford it, if you have access to it. That's one thing. Second thing is that if somebody understood that a therapist or the right therapist could help them achieve goals and be more successful and happy in life, and you frame it around the change and the opportunity, that's more enticing, isn't it? Wouldn't you love to go to talk to somebody if you knew that it would make you feel better, if you knew it would make you feel more motivated and capable and courageous and confident? Wouldn't you love to talk to somebody who could help you strategize about how to deal with things at work, how to diffuse situations with your family? That's what you're doing there. It's not kind of that caricature that we all have in our minds where you're laying on a couch staring at a ceiling and somebody is taking notes and looking in a different direction as you blob on and on and on about the sob story that's your life. That is not what my therapy sessions are like, and that's not what therapy has to be. And so I think you could frame it differently. Now, one other thing. You tee it up like that, and then you got to use the let them theory again. Let them decide whether they're going or not. Because again, you can't force somebody. You can't shame somebody. You can't drag them. If you're a parent, of course, you have agency over your kids, and you should empower your kids to talk to a therapist if you think it would help. But I'm talking adult to adult. That said, you got to let them make a decision, but then you've got to let yourself express what you need. It is 1000% your responsibility to say to somebody, I'm worried about you. I'm worried that you have depression. I can't handle this on my own. It is killing me to watch you struggle. And I need you to see a therapist. And I've found one, and I have made an appointment for you. It is your call if you're going to go or not. I've done the work, but I am asking you, because I am so worried about you, to go see this person and talk to them and get some support. If they say no, now you can express a boundary. I can't be in this relationship if you're not going to get help for your depression. I will not stay married to you if you do not get help for your addiction. I will have to end this if you cannot be sober. And if you refuse to get help, I am very scared that you're not going to be successful. And I would love for you to be successful. And so how you go about it is yours. But if you're not going to address this, then I'm not going to stay. And that's on you. That's not manipulation. That's clear communication. See, what most of us do is we badger somebody to go to therapy, right? And then we get pissed off when they don't go, or they go once and then they bark about the therapist. And then you know what we do? We never express a boundary. We just build up resentment. And then that resentment builds within us and we don't express it. It comes out in like barking and this and that and fighting and no longer having sex with the person and just being kind of angry and frustrated, when this whole thing could have been fixed by you being a clear communicator. And sometimes a clear communicator means, if you don't do X, then I'm not going to be in this relationship. That's what a boundary is. It's a clear line in the sand. There isn't a lot of gray in this area, because most relationships die on the vine because of built up resentment. And the reason why resentments build up is because you're not fucking talking about the things you feel about.
Absolutely.
Did I go off track there? I don't know.
I think a lot of people are going to have stern conversations with their partners tonight after hearing that. I love that.
Or me. And, look, you don't have to be like, I'm out of here after 17 years of marriage, because people don't pivot on a dime. But you can say, I'm worried about this. I'm giving you 3 months to deal with it. I want you to go to therapy. I've done the research. Here is the person. I am asking that you do. I did this with Chris. He was struggling with major depression for, turns out like 7 years. Thank God he had healthy habits, or the guy probably would have died from it. And by healthy habits, I meant waking up every morning, meditating every morning, going for a walk in the woods every morning, doing work that made him feel like he was doing something meaningful, writing in his journal every single day, talking to a therapist. But he did not want to face a depression diagnosis, and he felt that if he took medication, it would be weak. And I was concerned that all of the fucking meditating was making the depression worse because he was isolated. And there is new research out that shows that too much meditation can make depression worse because you are sitting in your thoughts. Wow. And it was, in my opinion, making it worse for Chris. And I had to finally, after 2 years of watching him get worse and worse, go, look, here's my boundary. Because what you're doing is not working. You need to go on the medication that the psychopharmacologist and our marriage counselor have both recommended, and you need to take it for a fucking year. And if you can't do that, this marriage won't work. Because I can't sit here and watch you get worse and have you argue against the thing that the professionals are telling you to do. And he took the medication. And do I feel like I won? No. I feel like I expressed a boundary, and that freed me of any resentment and desire to control him. And it made me feel safe. And that medication gave him a ladder to climb out of the mental hole. And after a year, he went off it. And he's been great. And in the words of our therapist, the medication got him out of that spiral, which allowed the therapy we were doing to work.
That makes sense.
I struggled with anxiety for 25 years, and I thought it was in the rearview mirror. I haven't had a panic attack, a bout of anxiety, anything really, for about 5 years. And boy, I woke up this morning, and there it was. And I think the fact that I woke up feeling so anxious, first of all, is really scary. For me, anxiety would always come in the morning, and it feels like dread, and then it immediately, for me, feels like I can't do this. And the this that I'm referring to is everything. So I want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing to handle my anxiety and about the importance of emotional flexibility. So as you can see, I am up here in Vermont. It's absolutely stunning. No reason to feel anxious up here. And that's another thing about anxiety, is we make ourselves wrong when we feel anxious. And I just did that. So here's why I'm feeling anxious. I came up here with my family because we've been quarantining outside of Boston for 5 weeks, and thankfully everybody's safe and healthy. And we came up to my husband's family's house up here in Vermont, a place that I love, because we thought a change of scenery would be super helpful for our psyche. And we've been here for 2 nights, and I woke up this morning and I felt so far away from my normal life that it scared the hell out of me. I'm physically far away, and it was a reminder of just how far away emotionally I feel from it, and how much I actually am struggling, how I'm struggling to stay focused, how I'm struggling to work on my own, how I'm struggling to work remote, how I'm struggling to not be around so many people. And I think all of that came together and hit me this morning in the form of anxiety. Now, for me, anxiety is really suffocating. It causes me to panic. It makes me want to run. And so here's some things that I've been doing this morning to work through it. First of all, there's two ways I'm going to talk about emotional flexibility. One is being flexible with yourself so that when you feel something that's uncomfortable, that you're flexible enough to give yourself space to feel it, because pushing it down, denying it, making yourself wrong, it's only going to make that negative feeling grow. It's going to make that anxiety eat you alive. And so I recognized that it was there. And what I do is I immediately say something. So my husband was next to me and I said something to Chris and he just listened. And he demonstrated emotional flexibility because he didn't make me wrong. He didn't try to fix it. He just let me have my reality, even though it's not what he's feeling. The next thing I did is I just got out a computer and I just started writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and dumping and dumping. And that helped a little bit. And so then I texted 3 friends. I texted Lisa and Gretchen and Mindy and said, I am really anxious right now and I'm struggling. And saying that and going back and forth on text with them was a little helpful. And then I started to pace around the house because that's what anxiety makes me do. I start to feel like a caged animal. And Chris said we should go for a hike. And honestly, the thought of climbing a mountain right now makes me want to die. So I said no. I didn't want to exert anything. I just know I need to move. And so instead, I'm going to go walk down the valley and do this 5-mile loop that I really don't feel like doing. But I know I need to because I know that anxiety gets stored in my nervous system. It's triggered by my nervous system, that everything right now feels far away from the life that I was living and the life that you were living. And that's why I'm so anxious right now. And so I'm going to move my body and move it out of my body. And then I am going to just practice having emotional flexibility and allowing the feelings to rise and fall and not do anything about it. So if you're experiencing anxiety for the first time, or if your normal anxiety has been jacked way up, or if it's coming back like it is for me, please be patient with yourself. Take deep breaths, get outside and walk, and by all means, be talking to your friends and family about what you're feeling. Because stored in here, it'll eat you alive. But when you start to speak about it and you start to move it through your body, you will move it out of your body and you will feel better. I know in an hour and a half when I'm done with this walk, I will feel 100 times better. And I know if you pick up the phone and call somebody, or you start journaling, or you put on an exercise video and you move, you will move this through your nervous system and you will feel back in control. I promise. I promise. I promise. I can't promise that it won't come back, but I can promise that you can make it disappear by taking those steps. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.